Welcome to the Tides and Moon vocabulary lesson. This will help prepare you for our classroom lesson in which we will be analyzing the relationship between phases of the moon and the tides on Earth. As I go through this video, I'd like you to fill out your vocabulary word sheet. Make sure to put your vocabulary word here, the definition here, and a meaningful sketch of that definition right here. If you ever feel like I'm going too quickly, please stop the video at the bottom and then press play again when you're ready. Remember that you will be getting points for this vocabulary word sheet, and you will be taking a quick quiz after this video so I know what you understood and what we need to work on more tomorrow. Our first word is ocean tides. So that's your first vocabulary word. The definition is the regular rising and falling of the surface of the oceans. These are caused by the gravitational pull of the moon on our oceans. Here's a picture below of our ocean tides. We're going to talk about types of tides. The first type of tide we're going to talk about is the high tide. So why do tides even happen? You're probably wondering. Our oceans bulge on the side of the earth that faces the moon and opposite from the moon. So if you look at this picture in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the moon here, and you have this tidal bulge on the side of our earth that faces the moon. But we also know that we're going to have a tidal bulge on the opposite side of the earth that does not face the moon. These are where you're going to get our high tides. So to add on to this makes the water level reach very high points. That's why it's called a high tide. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can see this picture that I'm zooming in and out of a high tide. As you can see, the ocean has come up because of the high tide onto the land. All right, now we're going to talk about low tides. This is the ocean areas between the bulges on the earth that experience a depression. This makes the water level decrease to very low points, and this is called a low tide. So again, it's pretty intuitive that a low tide would be a water level decrease and that a high tide would be a water level increase. So if we look at this picture in the bottom right-hand corner, again, we're going to reference those high tides or those tidal bulges that face the moon or that are opposite of the moon. So the low tides are the areas in between those two bulges. We have a pretty amazing picture here on the left-hand corner of a low tide. And I'm going to expand that out for you. So as you can see, there are many boats on this sandbar, and it's because of this extreme low tide that came all the way out. And these boats normally would be up in the water. All right, now we're going to talk about extreme tides. So, extreme tides are the greatest daily variation between the heights of the low and high tides. These are also called spring tides, but they do not only take place during the springtime. So, if you have lived near coastal areas, a lot of people will call them spring tides. I don't want there to be confusion that these extreme / spring tides only take place during the spring, because that's not true. These occur actually when the sun and moon are aligned, and that would be during the new and full moon phases. We have a great picture here on the right bottom hand side. Here's our sun and the earth and our moon. So in this case, the sun and moon are aligned, and they're in the full moon phase. So that's going to give us our extreme tide, or as some people would call it, our spring tide. And at the bottom, it's the same. When the sun and moon are aligned, we have the new moon when it's in between. The moon's in between the sun and the earth. And that again is going to give us another spring tide or extreme tide. So for our last vocabulary word, we have neap tide. This is the least daily variation between the heights of the low and high tides. These occur when the sun and moon are perpendicular. This will be your first and last quarter moon phases. So in this bottom right-hand corner, here's a neap tide diagram. You have the sun and the moon and our earth. As you can see, perpendicular means this. So when the sun and the moon are perpendicular, as it is here, you're going to have your first quarter moon phase. And that's going to result in a neap tide. Then again, if your sun is perpendicular to the moon and it's down here, so it's at the last quarter moon phase, you're going to get a neap tide again. And a neap tide results in the least daily variation between low and high tides. So it's pretty incredible that the moon causes all of these amazing tides. And I want you guys to think about, how do we use tides? We don't live in a coastal region, so you might have to dive a little bit deeper or ask your parents or search on the internet. But I'd like you to think about ways that we use ocean tides recreationally, for the food industry, and so on. And then when you get to class, we'll have that discussion.